Friends, welcome back my YouTube channel. If you want to watch the super hit movie Back in Action in full HD, then first of all, give this video a like, and if you are visiting our channel for the first time, then subscribe to this channel. The name of the movie we are going to discuss in today's video is Back in Action. So, we will give you information about how and where you will get to watch Back in Action film officially. Apart from this, we will give you a detailed look at the pre-production, post-production, budget, box office collection, and filming of this movie. A detailed review of the movie will also be given in this video, where we will explain the story of this movie in detail. We will also discuss the cast and casting performance of the movie. Apart from this, information about the music department and technical department will also be given. Because of this video is going to be very interesting and entertaining. So you must watch this video till the end. And if you haven't liked this video yet, then like this video now and subscribe to this channel. So let's start the video. Back in Action is a 2025 American action comedy film directed by Seth Gordon from a script he co-wrote with Brendan O'Brien. It stars Jamie Foxx and Cameron Diaz as two CIA operatives who are pulled back into espionage after 15 years living incognito with their two children, when their secret cover is blown. Andrew Scott, Jamie Demetriou, Kyle Chandler, and Glenn Close also star in supporting roles. The film was released by Netflix on January 17, 2026. Plot: CIA knock operatives. Matt and his pregnant fiancée Emily are tasked by their superior and friend Chuck to secure the Industrial Control Systems, ICS, a device that can control any electronic system, from the Polish KGB agent turned terrorist Balthazar Gore during his children's grandiose birthday party. Matt and Emily manage to steal the device and escape to a rendezvous point. However, on their flight home, the crew ambushes them for the key as they are on Gore's payroll. The duo manages to neutralize the flight crew and barely escapes the plane crash. Realizing someone must have fed the flight crew information of their key, the pair decide to go off-grid. 15 years later, the now married Matt and Emily reside in Atlanta under new identities, while trying to care for their children, Leo and Alice. This is until a filmed brawl involving the couple inside a nightclub attracts the attention of Chuck, as well as Gore's Polish-Belarusian mercenary group Volka, whose men shoot Chuck while he is trying to warn Matt and Emily. Matt and Emily manage to lose the mercenaries, taking the children with them from school before catching a flight to England. There, Matt had hidden the ICS key inside the manor belonging to Emily's estranged mother, Ginny Curtis. She herself is a former MI6 sniper who leads an offshore NGO. Arriving in Heathrow, the family is pursued by both Volka and MI6, led by Emily's ex-boyfriend, Baron. While they had hidden their former identities from their children, the couple have to reveal the truth to them once they witness their parents fending off Volka's mercenaries and evading the pursuing MI6. When Matt and Emily find the ICS key, Volka's mercenaries raid the manor. Ginny fends off against a few of Volka's operatives, but her partner Nigel is injured. Chuck arrives, revealing that not only he faked his death, but also is working with Gore and Volka. This is in revenge against Matt and Emily, as their presumed deaths led to his being fired. Matt and Emily are forced to surrender the ICS key to save their kids, but they are knocked out and Chuck's men take Leo and Alice anyway. Using Leo's smart ring, they track them down to a black tie event in Tate Modern London, where he plans to sell the ICS key to the highest bidder. As a demonstration, his tech assistant Daphne uses the key to hack the power station, causing a brief blackout across London, then the Thames barrier to forcibly open its floodgates. Matt and Emily infiltrate the museum, knocking out Chuck and Gore's guards while searching for their children. The couple are followed by Baron and MI6, who also arrive to apprehend Chuck. While Baron's agents capture the Volka operatives, the couple, with assistance from Ginny, pursue Chuck. He intends to escape London with Leo and Alice through the Thames barrier. Nigel spots Daphne and crashes his van into hers, rendering her unconscious and securing the ICS key. Ginny guides Nigel to close the Thames barrier while Emily commandeers a boat, and she and Matt catch up to Chuck. Leo and Alice jump into the water as Emily and Matt subdue Chuck. They leave him on the boat as it crashes into the now closing barrier, presumably killing him. Rescued by both the police and MI6, the family rest in relief as they reconcile with Emily's mother. As the entire family attends Alice's soccer game, Matt and Emily are met by Baron. He informs them that Chuck's body has never been found, suggesting he may still be alive, and proposes they recruit Emily's father, whom Matt is unaware of. Cast Jamie Foxx as Matt, Emily's husband, who's a former CIA operative. Cameron Diaz as Emily, Matt's wife, who's a former CIA operative. Andrew Scott as Baron, MI6 agent, who Emily briefly dated. Jamie Demetrio as Nigel, Ginny's boyfriend. Production. In June 2022, it was reported that Cameron Diaz was coming out of retirement for a Seth Gordon, and Brendan O'Brien penned action comedy entitled Back in Action, also set to star Jamie Foxx. Bo Bauman was revealed to be producing for Good One Productions, with Seth Gordon producing for Exhibit A and Fox, Datari Turner, O'Brien, and Mark McNair executive producing. In August 2022, Fox spoke about persuading Diaz, whose last film prior to her retirement in 2014 was Annie, which he also starred in, to join the cast, telling Entertainment Tonight that Cameron is such an incredible force and she has done so much in this business, and that he asked her, "Do you want to have some fun? Just have some fun." And I think that's what brought her to it. We're so happy that it's happening and looking forward to it. In November 2022, Glenn Close and Kyle Chandler were added to the cast. In February 2023, Andrew Scott, McKenna Roberts, Rylan Jackson, and Jamie Demetriou joined the cast. Principal photography took place in London from December 2nd, 2022 to March 9th, 2023. In late February 2023, Diaz shot scenes at the River Thames. Filming in Atlanta began on March 28th and wrapped in late April. In mid-April, while Fox was hospitalized for a medical emergency, body doubles were used to film his remaining scenes. The opening scene showing a cityscape was filmed in Ljubljana, Slovenia. Netflix spent $207.2 million producing the film, which came down to a net cost of $158.9 million after UK tax incentives. While Gordon and O'Brien were solely credited with the screenplay, various contributions were made by Andrea Berloff, Matteo Borghese, Joel Church Cooper, Adam Cole Kelly, Dana Fox, Paul Fruchbaum, John Gattens, Joe Nussbaum, Cassie Pappas, Lennon Parham, Sam Pittman, Ellen Shanman, Laura Solon, David Stassen, Jessica St. Clair, Victoria Strauss, and Lillian Yu. Release. Back in Action was released by Netflix on January 17th, 2025. It was originally set to be released on November 15th, 2024, before being pushed to its current release date. The film amassed 46.8 million views in its first 3 days, giving it the biggest opening weekend for an English-language Netflix film since The Adam Project. Critical response. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 28% of 95 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 4.410. The website's consensus reads, "It's good to have Diaz and Fox back, but they deserve a warmer welcome than this rote action comedy." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 46 out of 100 based on 23 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Christy Lemire of RogerEbert.com gave the film 1 out of 4 stars and wrote, "Back in Action isn't as obnoxiously soulless as Red Notice, but it's firmly within that subgenre of glossy, globe-trotting action pictures you can stream while you fold your laundry. It all feels so cynical." Richard Roper of the Chicago Sun-Times gave it 2.5 out of 4 stars, writing, "Director Seth Gordon, 4 Christmases, Horrible Bosses, knows how to film fast-moving comedies with star appeal, and Diaz, who hasn't lost an ounce of on-screen charisma, and Fox are terrific together. But wouldn't it have been lovely if they had tackled more creative and challenging material?" Trading quips while engaging in high-wire action sequences that defy all credibility is the movie equivalent of ordering fast food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner when there's a whole world of more interesting menus out there. Back in Action review. The last time we saw Cameron Diaz on screen, it was way back in 2014. The star, who had been such a magnetic force in Being John Malkovich, My Best Friend's Wedding, and There's Something About Mary, had checked out with a trio of pale production line films that represented what we'd grimly come to expect at that stage of her career. Diaz, who had once easily moved between dark and light as well as large and small, had smoothed out any of her more interesting edges to become one of the industry's highest paid, yet most boringly unchallenged stars. That year saw her lost in the juvenile comedies The Other Woman and Sex Tape, before being horrendously miscast in a dud remake of Annie, and not long after, she chose to retire, perhaps feeling as glum over the quality of her films as those of us stuck watching them. News of her reemergence after a decade of focusing on family and an organic wine brand came at an opportune time, as the industry still struggles to find newer and younger yet equally luminous movie stars to take over from those that came before. Many from that era have found success on Netflix, from Adam Sandler and Jennifer Lopez to Jessica Alba, and so it seemed like the smoothest way for Diaz to re-engage with her fans, partnering with her Annie co-star Jamie Foxx for a broadly appealing action comedy. It's an easy way back in, a low-effort comeback vehicle quite literally called Back in Action, but the film is only a half victory at best. While it might prove that Diaz still possesses that same particular magic, it also shows that she should be far more discerning with how she chooses to share it. She's far from alone in thinking that action comedy is the best way, though. Recent star pairings like Chris Evans and Ana de Armas, Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling, John Cena and Alison Brie, Kaylee Cuoco and David Oyelowo, Halle Berry and Mark Wahlberg, and then Michelle Monaghan and Mark Wahlberg have all also seen the appeal, even if critics have struggled to agree. Only Gosling and Blunt achieved a fresh rating with The Fall Guy. The formula, quip, shoot, kiss, repeat, has become rather exasperating for those of us still awake and paying attention, with the choice to coast on the surface pleasures of attractive stars, allowing for everything around them to suffer. If only a fraction of the big star salaries had been siphoned off for a script doctor, then maybe we could have had some real fun here. As it stands, the mostly rather rote Back in Action is best seen as just an excuse to watch Diaz act again. And she's as charming as she always has been, especially alongside Foxx, with whom she shares a comfortable chemistry. They're playing a couple who give up their exciting lives as spies for the safe predictability of suburbia when they become pregnant, but they get sucked back in when their cover is blown, and this time, their kids are coming along for the ride. Director Seth Gordon is no stranger to middling lose-lose action comedies, having been involved in the writing of The Lost City while directing both Identity Thief and Baywatch, and as in those films, there's no elegance to how the two genres are clumsily smashed together. Watching a couple and then a family limply banter about screen time or school pickup while involved in a car chase or shootout isn't enough to tick both boxes. The majority of the dutifully choreographed action sequences are also soundtracked by discordant wink-wink love songs, like Etta James's At Last, or Nat King Cole's Love, in such a smug and familiar way that it all starts to feel a little like parody, as if we're watching action comedy movie. The action here is slightly more serviceable, if never remotely exciting, than the comedy, with a script from the Gordon and Neighbors co-writer Brendan O'Brien that settles for tired family sitcom shtick. Lazy, exclamation point heavy one-liners missing all targets entirely, no matter how hard the two stars might try. While Diaz and Foxx might acquit themselves without any real shame, their supporting cast aren't quite as lucky. Andrew Scott comes off lightest, just seeming a tad lost as the underwritten big bad, but Glenn Close as Diaz's British mother and her love interest, played bizarrely by Jamie Demetriou, are not quite as lucky, both going supersized with go-for-broke pantomime performances, aiming to steal scenes, but leaving us with only secondhand embarrassment. Lovely as it is to see Cameron Diaz starring in her first film in a decade, it's equally dismaying that the film is back in action. As the title suggests, Diaz is indeed back. Her last movie was the 2014 redo of Annie, where she played Miss Hannigan. Here, she reteams with that film's Daddy Warbucks figure, Jamie Foxx, in a superficial and glib Netflix spy comedy. Diaz and Foxx also shared the screen before that in Oliver Stone's 1999 football drama, Any Given Sunday. But there's nothing to this movie beyond the CGI-heavy set pieces and snarky banter that unfortunately have become standard. Back in Action isn't as obnoxiously soulless as Red Notice, but it's firmly within that subgenre of glossy, globe-trotting action pictures you can stream while you fold your laundry. It all feels so cynical. At least Back in Action has the whiff of aiming toward substance, although its premise is incredibly familiar. Diaz and Foxx co-star as Emily and Matt, former spies who fell in love with each other on an ill-fated mission 15 years ago. Having given up their dangerous life of espionage, they now enjoy a blissfully mundane existence in suburban Atlanta with their two kids. Surly, sneaky teenager Alice, McKenna Roberts, and rule-following techie tween Leo, Rylan Jackson. When their former boss, Kyle Chandler, arrives on their doorstep and tells them they've been compromised, Emily and Matt must spring. Let's all say it together now. Back in Action. Their goal is to track down the MacGuffin doodad that eluded them in the flashback at the film's start, which can create widespread power outages, something like that. Their children, who thought they were simply boring, middle-aged Gen Xers with bad taste in music, get dragged into the adventures and find out who they really are and what they can really do, like a big-budget version of Spy Kids. If anything works at all on any level in the film, from director and co-writer Seth Gordon, Horrible Bosses, Identity Thief, Baywatch, it's the way it depicts the tension that arises between parent and child during this hormonally fraught period of adolescence. Screen time, it's a problem. Roberts and Jackson at least show some nice comic timing. But it is mind-boggling how little chemistry Diaz and Foxx have. Individually magnetic and charismatic, these capital A-listers never gel with each other. A lot of that has to do with the script from Gordon and co-writer Brendan O'Brien, the Neighbors movies, which mostly alternates between shrieky bickering and people standing around explaining things to each other. When the movie settles down for a few seconds and allows them to interact with each other as actual human beings, we get a glimpse of what might have been. Diaz still has that sunny go-for-broke demeanor that's ordinarily her appealing trademark, and Foxx has a cool, tossed-off delivery that can be slyly charming. He does get one laugh-out-loud joke about Jason Bourne, but Back in Action seems far more interested in overwhelming us with elaborate brawls and chases. Perhaps the most annoying trope of all that it borrows from recent action comedies is its reliance on ironic song choices to serve as a wacky contrast to the violence we're seeing. Etta James' At Last during a firefight at a British gas station, James Brown's Papa's Got a Brand New Bag during a clash with thugs at the Tate Modern, and worst of all, Dean Martin's Ain't That a Kick in the Head when Matt and Emily are literally kicking people in the head on a private jet. This instinct is so smug and so tired at this point. Glenn Close is well cast as Emily's estranged mother, a former spy herself who remains formidable long after her own retirement. But Andrew Scott goes woefully to waste as an MI6 agent who's been on the hunt for Emily, and this desirable, powerful key for his own personal reasons. One of our most startling and assured actors working today, Scott gets nothing to play and looks totally bored every time he's on screen. As Back in Action drags on and on, we know exactly how he feels. Plot: former CIA spies Emily and Matt are pulled back into espionage after their secret identities are exposed. Review: at this stage, I feel like I could just copy and paste reviews for Netflix movies, as it tends to always be the same thing. Generic fluff we've seen 100 times before, and Back in Action is another such film. I was interested in watching this purely due to Cameron Diaz coming out of retirement for it, and Jamie Foxx had a stroke back in 2023 while making it. It's nice to see both actors together on screen, and their characters are appealing, so we are rooting for them, even if there is nothing remotely original about the story. It does at least have a decent twist I wasn't expecting, and there are some nicely choreographed fight scenes. Like so many of these movies, practically every fight scene is accompanied by a song, which is fine every so often. But, as I've said before, when nearly every set piece has a song, it takes away any sense of tension or threat. This movie isn't meant to be taken seriously, and it's lighthearted fun with nothing to particularly love or hate. It's just fine. The script has a couple of funny moments, but nothing really laugh out loud. The character of Nigel is painfully unfunny, and there are moments when you can tell you're watching people acting where it just feels off. It's for the most part well-paced and doesn't go too long between fight scenes, making it an easy and inoffensive watch. I also like the score, which is especially James Bond-esque during the speedboat chase finale. I'm a self-proclaimed Cameron Diaz diehard. In addition to watching The Holiday every year, wishing I could be one of Charlie's Angels, and firmly believing that My Best Friend's Wedding has one of the best openings of all time. I hope I got wishin' and hopin' stuck in your head. I also think Bad Teacher and The Other Woman are both criminally underrated comedic gems. Am a staunch defender of 2014 Annie, and think they should make as many Shrek movies as they want. Thank you very much. Needless to say, I was pumped when I found out she was coming out of retirement after over a decade. I'm still excited that she's back in action. Pun definitely intended. But man, I wish she had returned in a better film. Back in Action begins by introducing us to Matt, Jamie Foxx, and Emily Diaz, two spies who are tasked with getting a master key that can control the power grids of entire cities, alongside their guy in the chair, Chuck, Kyle Chandler, and Agent Barron, Andrew Scott, who harbors feelings for Emily. It's an already dangerous mission made even more complicated by the fact that Emily finds out she's pregnant right before they're set to go on it. After they retrieve the key, Matt tells Emily he's all in on their relationship despite the fact they've only been together for a couple of months. Because Matt never had a family and Emily resents her own for choosing their jobs as spies over being present for her, the two of them decide to fake their deaths, retire from the espionage life, and raise their child in a more traditional household. Fast forward a decade and a half or so later, we see Matt and Emily living the aforementioned quiet life with their defiant daughter Alice, McKenna Roberts, and anxiety-ridden son Leo, Rylan Jackson. When Alice's rebellious behavior forces Matt and Emily to flex old skills, they not only realize they miss their fast-paced lifestyle, but also get dragged back into it after their identities are leaked via a viral video. This new mission brings up old feelings and threatens to reveal long-buried secrets, and now that their kids are involved, the pressure has never been greater to take down the bad guys. My first impression of Back in Action from its synopsis and trailers was, this sounds like Spy Kids from the parents' perspective. And that's an amazing thing. Spy Kids was selected for the Library of Congress National Film Registry last year. Not to mention the fact that Antonio Banderas and Carla Gugino are often cited alongside the Mummy's Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser in the elite canon of movies that made people realize they were bisexual. Spy Kids rules and is one of those films where, even though it's marketed toward kids, its writing and acting are solid enough to be enjoyable for all ages. My second impression was that it might be a sleeker, sexier, and decidedly more adult outing in the vein of Netflix's Hitman. After all, Foxx and Diaz have known each other for a long time, and the spy genre is inherently teeming with steamy potential. What better way to capitalize on some real-life chemistry? Unfortunately, Back in Action doesn't lean into either of these avenues, resulting in a bland and puzzling middle ground. By trying to appeal to everyone, it doesn't appeal to any specific audience. The adolescent characters are too one-note and underdeveloped to be engaging for a younger crowd, so while it's technically appropriate for family movie night, I wouldn't count on them staying engaged. Consequently, the action and romance are too tame and watered down to make it a good choice for date night. Back in Action has all the ingredients to make either a great comedic-leaning family film or a snappy, sizzling R-rated espionage drama, but the film's refusal to fully commit to either lane has me wondering who this is for. The last thing a movie like Back in Action should be is boring, but the spy plot is so comically simplistic, generic, and unengaging that there's no real excitement or surprise to be had as far as the story goes. You can see every line and twist coming from a mile away, and there's never any sense of real stakes or danger. Even the action sequences, which are competent and even occasionally impressive, especially the fight choreography, can't distract from the lackluster story at its core. We've seen all of these beats numerous times, making for a tedious watch that feels much longer than its 2-hour runtime. The emotional elements fare even worse. While there's no doubt that Back in Action has assembled an excellent cast, even they can't manage to add much dimension or complexity. You know exactly who all of these characters are from the moment you meet them, and they never evolve beyond stereotype. Even the supposed depth they showcase is predictable, and reads as nothing more than a convenient plot device. Glenn Close is clearly having a blast playing Diaz's badass mother Ginny, and her relationship with young bumbling Nigel, Jamie Demetriou, is the funniest part of the film, though that's unfortunately not saying much as laughs are scarce. But the conflict between Emily and Ginny rings completely hollow, and while the film tries to do an interesting intergenerational parallel between it and Emily's relationship with her own daughter, it's all woefully oversimplified too. That's the biggest problem with the film. None of the emotional arcs have any kind of real weight or authenticity. They feel like mere placeholders to get to the next big action sequence, none of which feel particularly fresh or innovative either. We've all seen countless fights in clubs, on planes, and at black tie galas. This film had the opportunity to break the mold considering its premise, but instead of giving us something new, it plays things safe, relying on tried-and-true locales and patterns. Besides Close and Demetriou, Chandler and Scott are other welcome additions to the stacked cast, and get the chance to play against their usual type. But while they're two actors that elevate anything they're in, They're starting at such a disadvantage and have such weak material to work with that even their involvement can't make it a memorable watch. Most people are likely clicking on this film for Foxx and Diaz, and they too do their best with what they're given. But the dull, exposition-heavy script never gives them the chance to flex any of their dramatic muscles, and they rarely get to be truly funny either. There's an odd line about Wordle or a gag about Uber that lands, but there's nothing laugh out loud or unexpected. While I have no doubt they had a good time making the movie with its wild stunts and silly concept, I just wish it was even half as much fun to watch. In Back in Action, a domestic spy caper as generic as its title, Jamie Foxx and Cameron Diaz, as CIA operatives who've become a romantic couple, attend a kid's birthday party thrown by a cyber terrorist from Belarus whose safe they're planning to break into. But their identities are unmasked in about 5 minutes. They have to fight their way out of the criminal's mansion, which they do in an extended sequence of bone-breaking face-offs, all accompanied by Frank Sinatra singing L-O-V-E. L is for the way you look, so at me. The song as it's used here lays on the ironic jauntiness with a trowel. It's the film's way of saying nothing's at stake, don't take it seriously, turn off your brain and sink into the warm bath of this Netflix product of the week. Because that's all it's here for. Seth Gordon, the director of Back in Action, thinks in cartoon reality terms. He thinks that's his job, and setting ultra-violent action sequences to old standards is just about the only playbook Back in Action has. Our heroes are on an Mi-6 plane when they're ambushed by the flight attendants, whom they proceed to lay waste to as Sinatra sings, "Ain't that a kick in the head?" Haha. The pilot gets shot, the plane is going down, but there's Frank, bopping away. Later, Foxx and Diaz use gas station hoses as flamethrowers to incinerate some thug attackers. The images of people burning alive are accompanied by Etta James singing At last my love has come along. They win the fight, but make no mistake. This is the entertainment strategy of a misanthropic hack. After that plane crashes, Matt, Foxx, and Emily, Diaz, who is pregnant, seize the opportunity to fake their own deaths and begin a normal life. The film then cuts to the present day where they're suburban parents with 2 kids, 14-year-old Alice, McKenna Roberts, and 12-year-old Leo, Rylan Jackson. But they're drawn back into the fray after they tail Alice to a nightclub, where she's in the company of some older dudes. They take her out of the club by beating up a couple of the other partiers. A flagrantly implausible scenario, though it's necessary so that a cell phone video of it can go viral and out them as former spies. With their kids now along for the ride, the family flies to London, where Matt has stashed the ICS key, the film's super dull MacGuffin. If they retrieve it and return it to the CIA, they can use it for leverage to gain immunity. But the key is the thing everyone wants, including their old terrorist foes. Watching Back in Action, it feels like some producer took the original, overblown, raucous with gunfire and highway crashes 2005 movie version of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the one that wasted Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, and said, "Bring me something just like this, except don't make it so goddamn intellectual. I want it dumber, louder, without all that wimpy dialogue." There isn't much of an espionage plot to Back in Action. Basically, the movie consists of Foxx and Diaz beating the living shit out of people. And, in between, acting as breezy and clueless and innocuous as if they were playing the parents in a reboot of Family Ties. The 2 actors are appealing. They've got marriage as domestic Fight Club chemistry. And when Glenn Close shows up as Emily's British mother, a former super spy herself, the film calms down for a bit and perks up. Close's Ginny has an assistant, Nigel, Jamie Demetriou, who is a spy in training and also her lover, even though he's at least 40 years her junior. And Nigel, it turns out, does not know what he's doing. This produces a funny sequence where he has to save London by tapping the right things into a laptop, and he reacts exactly as most of us do when confronted with the infuriating digital logistical hoop to jump through of the week. But the real reason Nigel's unsureness is such a balm is that everyone else in Back in Action, heroes, villains, kids, is so cocksure at every moment that the film leaves no room for any comic thriller ingredient beyond boring, one-dimensional badass certitude. The title Back in Action not only references the story of 2 off-duty spies, but also the return of Cameron Diaz and Jamie Foxx. The duo were last screen partners in 2014 for the remake of Annie, Diaz's last film before her retirement. Foxx suffered a medical emergency during production, and Back in Action is his big welcome back after being waylaid. Regardless of the quality of the film, the project is engaging enough, with two charismatic and talented stars coming together for a quaint, family-friendly adventure. Before you click play on Netflix's Actioner, please toss out any expectations that you will be entertained by some sophisticated, thrilling, meticulously crafted action film. This is the My Spy brand of action flicks, and for what it is, it's a somewhat fun watch. It is not groundbreaking but entertaining, despite some steep pacing, writing, and acting shortcomings. Mind you, no one is expecting fantastic performances, but when you have the likes of Diaz, Foxx, Andrew Scott, and Glenn Close, the child actors aren't who we expect to be the standout talent. Back in Action follows Diaz and Foxx as Emily and Matt, a pair of spies for the CIA who find they have been betrayed just as they discover they are expecting a baby. They decide to escape it all and live a calm, suburban life with their new family. However, the mission that changed everything becomes relevant again when they are discovered at a club busting their underage daughter. Cue Kyle Chandler, their former boss, who knocks on the door and brings trouble with him. The story about out-of-work spies isn't entirely original, but it is a common trope that family adventures tend to deploy to get kids in on the semi-G-rated adventure. And for what it is worth, Diaz and Foxx seem to be having fun with it. The film is entertaining, and our leads are having a good time together. Everyone else, however, except for Close, is practically sleepwalking through the film. Scott is somewhat amusing as an MI6 agent who has a crush on Emily, but he's giving the same level of energy as someone forced into a sleep study. Jamie Demetriou is a surprising delight and the only one besides the kid actors to fully embrace the film. Close is the closest to bringing the same level of energy as Diaz and Foxx, which isn't incredibly high to begin with. She's speaking with a different accent than her own, which requires some level of attentiveness and intention. While sometimes engaging, the film still feels deflated because there's only so much investment being put into making this wholesome family adventure exciting and worthwhile. Diaz and Foxx are the main draws, of course. As Emily and Matt, they create the fun atmosphere required to tell this story. Diaz slips into the profession with ease after being in retirement. In a way, her performance is reminiscent of Natalie from Charlie's Angels, only more mature. The actress has this knack for bringing quirky, feisty women to life without ever coming across as grating. There is a lightness about her that really invites us to root for her. Foxx, on the other hand, is a natural comedian and charmer. He is effortless with his trying to be cool but is low-key, still very cool kind of attitude. Together, he and Diaz are sweet and delightful. Though there isn't great romantic chemistry, their bond is palpable and undeniable. That said, the two don't seem to be giving the same energy they've given to other, better quality projects. It feels more like they are doing it for the kids. It's a nice sentiment, but it doesn't help to make Back in Action a must-see. Seth Gordon helmed the likes of Baywatch, Horrible Bosses, Identity Theft, and Back in Action, which fits neatly into this filmography. It's a semi-funny comedy with great talent that lacks interesting directing choices. Gordon's approach is very stable but boring. That would be fine if the script wasn't lacking. A few chuckles are littered throughout, but that can be credited to the actor's line delivery. Back in Action succeeds by doing the bare minimum. It's not outright terrible, but it's nothing to get too excited about either. There's even a sweet subplot about mother and daughters and familial trust. It's an overall cute family movie, and anyone who adores Diaz and Foxx will find a way to enjoy it. Back in Action is now available to stream on Netflix. The film is 114 minutes long and rated PG-13 for sequences of violence and action, some suggestive references and strong language, and brief teen partying. In that one, it was Jaime Lee Curtis' bored housewife who realized her hunky husband Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't getting those muscles from selling computer monitors on the road. A little later, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie fatefully sizzled up the concept in a double-header, where it turns out the non-communicative spouses were both spooks for rival agency Xeno Mr. Mrs. Smith Back in Action. It tweaks the premise again. Husband and wife are still both spies, but now they're aware of their shared history, even as they've kept their past adventures secret from the kids. It is an amusing enough wrinkle for any parent who's ever realized their children believe mom and dad never had a life before they were born, and that old folks have always been lame. Director and co-writer Seth Gordon. Horrible Bosses of Baywatch. Might not be reinventing the wheel, but plenty of entertaining studio comedies of yore, including A Horrible Bosses, have started from less. Alas, a Back in Action is less studio comedy than modern streaming content. The action is largely pedestrian and obligatory, lazily hanging on popular needle drops that range from Frank Sinatra to Ada James. The jokes and plot twists are obvious, and the overall effect ultimately being adequate. It is meant to be consumed, but never experienced, and even the thrill of seeing Foxx and Diaz back in action fizzles quickly. Both actors who broke out in the 1990s and 2000 saw and spend much of this movie explaining to these Gen Alpha youths that they not boomers, have a nice, easygoing rowray, but never one you'd mistake as romantic or sizzling. The pair come across like old college chumps who still like to hit the pub once in a while. It's more work wife and work husband than the real marital thing. To use a term Gen Xers won't be offended by, they just seem happy to be here and go through the paces and martial arts paces. That is a far cry from what they were doing back in a Charlie's Angels set or Miami Vice heyday. Never mind me being John Malkovich or Collateral. Unfortunately, the paces the movie gives them so barely register a reaction that it's remarkable how quickly the running time gets stolen from them by Glenn Close and Jamie Detrieux as an unlikely made-to-December pair of grandparents. There are moments of amusement to be had from the leads, particularly whenever the film reuses the beat of them, astonishing their kids by beating the stuffing out of bad guys time and again. A mom and dad got moves. We're sure plenty of real-life Gen X and older millennial parents will revel in the fantasy of showing the perpetually online generation how things were done back in the day before social media came along. But it's all in service to a streamer that threw in this movie's towel to the smartphone screen before a punch was ever rehearsed. In other words, on family movie night, this one is more for the olds. The kids can and will keep scrolling. Dottin back in action. A domestic spy caper as generic as its title. A Jamie Foxx and a Cameron Diaz as CIA operatives who've become a romantic couple attend a kid's birthday party thrown by a cyber tourist from Belarus whose safe they're planning to break into. But their identities are unmasked in about 5 minutes. They have to fight their way out of the criminal's mansion, which they do in an extended sequence of bone-breaking face-offs, all accompanied by Frank Sinatra singing LV Law. Broken Bar is for the way you woke a broken bar at me, Broken Bar. The song as it's used here lays on the ironic jauntiness with a tell. It's the film's way of saying nothing's at stake. Don't take it seriously. Turn off your brain and sink into the warm bath of this Netflix product of the week because that's all it's here for. Seth Gordon, the director of Back in Action, thinks, in cartoon reality terms, he thinks that's his job, and setting ultra-violent action sequences to old standards is just about the only playbook Back in Action has. Our heroes are on an MI6, plain when they're ambushed by the flight attendants whom they proceed to lay waste to as Sinatra sings. Ain't that a kick in the head? Ha ha. The pilot gets shot. The plane is going down, but there's Frank popping away. Later, Foxx and Diaz use gas station hoses as flamethrowers to incinerate some thug attackers. The images of people burning alive are accompanied by Ada James singing At Last. At last, my Alavia has come along a broken bar. They win the fight, but make no mistake. This is the entertainment strategy of a misanthropic hack. After that plane crashes, Matt Foxx and Emily Diaz, who is pregnant, seize the opportunity to fake their own deaths and begin a normal life. The film then cuts to the present day where they're suburban parents with 2 kids, 14-year-old Alice McKenna Roberts and 12-year-old Leo Rylan Jackson. But they're drawn back into the fray after they tail Alice to a nightclub where she's in the company of some older dudes. They take her out of the club by beating up a couple of the other parters. A flagrantly implausible scenario, though it's necessary so that the cell phone video of it can go viral and out them as former spies. With their kids now along for the ride, the family flies to London where Matt has stashed the ICS key, the film Super Doll MacGuffin. If they retrieve it and return it to the CIA, they can use it for leverage to gain immunity. But the key is the thing everyone wants, including their old terrorist foe as a broken bar. Watching Back in Action, it feels like some producer took the originals, overblown rockers with gunfire and highway crashes 2005 movie version of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the one that wasted Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and said, Bring me something just like this, except don't make it so goddamn intellectual. I want it dumber, louder, without all that wimpy dialogue. There isn't much of an espionage plot to back in action. Basically, the movie consists of Foxx and Diaz beating the living out of people AA and in between, acting as breezy and clueless and innocuous, as if they were playing the parents in a reboot of Family Ties. The two actors are appealing. They've got marriage as domestic Fight Club chemistry. And when Glenn Close shows up as Emily's British mother, a former super speak herself, the film calms down for a bit and perks up. Closes. Jenny has an assistant, Nigel, Jaime Detrium, who is a spy in training and also her lover, even though he's at least 40 years her junior. And Nigel, it turns out, does not know what he's doing. This produces a funny sequence where he has to save London by tapping the right things into a laptop, and he reacts exactly as most of us do when confronted with the infuriating digital logistical hoop to jump through of the week. But the real reason Nigel's unsure is such a bomb is that everyone else in Back in Action, heroes, villains, kids, is so conure at every moment that the film leaves no room for any comic thriller ingredient beyond boring, one-dimensional badass certitude. Forget death and taxes. The one certainty in life is that when you hit middle age, teenagers will roll their eyes at you and find you awfully uncool. Even celebrities and rock stars share stories on talk shows about how their brood are comically unimpressed with them because parents, a bits of bedtime and screen time are lame. But what? These kids just don't understand. To paraphrase Will Smith classic is that we very cool once and have the potential to be cool again. Or at least this is the fantasy that plays out at the heart of Fab Back in Action, a rousing action comedy starring Cameron Diaz and Jamie Foxx. The Netflix original kicks off with Diaz and Foxx as a pair of sexy spies transporting a digital key on a secret mission. But when a devious double-cross forces them to fake their deaths, they go into hiding to save not only their lives, but also that of their baby, who Emily Diaz has just learned she's carrying. Cut to 15 years later, and she and Matt Fox have settled into a cozy suburban life where they have a big, lovely house and 2 teen children who think they know everything. From how to sneak out with a fake ID to how to make the most out of their handheld tech. But when a surly threat to their daughter pitches Emily back, on the run, the first act of Fab Back in Action that plays like a 90s S-rom-com, with an espionage twist, like what if me, Ryan, and Tom Hanks did a Sleepless in Skyfall as couple-up spies Diaz and Fox have a bright and cozy chemistry, reminiscent of the splendid era of the genre where the banter was bouncy and the soundtrack was determinedly old school. As such, Dean Martin's Ain't That a Kick in the Head plays as the jaunty backdrop to a hand-to-hand combat sequence that pits the pair against sneering mercenaries. Of course, as both Diaz and Fox, and by extension, Emily and Matt, are firmly Gen X. There are also songs on the soundtrack that hit the 90s-ish nostalgia spot like Lauryn Hill's Dwop, That Thing, and Salt and Pepper's Push It. The latter gets a special moment in a family road trip sing-along where the parents revel in knowing every lusty word while their kids look on in shock and embarrassment and fret not. Gang Diaz may have taken a decade away from appearing in movies, but her dance moves are just as we remembered from The Sweetest Thing, a confident, dorky, and adorable. As the female lead, Diaz herself feels a bit of a throwback in the role, not only because of her time out of the public eye, but also because He Back and Action is exactly the kind of movie she's best in. The actor has always had a dazzling screen presence and comedy chops, say made clear as early as Foxx 94's Jim Carrey, Vehicle the Mosca, and Foxx 97's My Best Friend's Wedding. But her gift for physical comedy expanded masterfully into action choreography and delightful movies like IA, A Life Less Ordinary. A Charlie's Angels, and A Night and Day it's a pleasure to see her back in action, making the most of every cheeky close-up-ass kicking whiteism and sharp, turn from winsome smile to ferocious sneer. Fox proves Diaz's perfectly paired partner, matching her high energy and ability to switch seamlessly from game goofiness into sleek spy chic. Together, they offer an action comedy that cruises on charisma. Is the female lead. Diaz herself feels a bit of a throwback in the role, not only because of her time out of the public eye, but also because He Back in Action is exactly the kind of movie she's best in. The actor has always had a dazzling screen presence and comedy chops, say a Maid, clear as early as 1994's Jim Carrey. Vehically the Mascot, and 1997's My Best Friend's Wedding. But her gift for physical comedy expanded masterfully into action choreography and delightful. Movies like IA, A Life Less Ordinary, A Charlie's Angels, A and A Night and Day. It's a pleasure to see her back in action, making the most of every cheeky close-up ass-kicking whiteicism and sharp turn from winsome smile to ferocious sneer. Foxx proves Diaz's perfectly paired partner, matching her high energy and ability to switch seamlessly from game goofiness into sleek spy chic. Together, they offer an action comedy that cruises on charisma. It's probably premature to say Netflix has finally started finding its groove with mainstream popcorn features. But after Rebel Regia and Arena delivered muscular BM movie entertainment back in action, or provide similar throwback pleasures, albeit in a family-friendly comedic vein, as Seth Gordon is more of a journeyman than either Jeremy Salier or John Klett-Serra, the genre-savvy directors of those recent stablemeds. But he gets the job done and keeps the wheels spinning, partly by peppering the action with enough vehicular chases and physical clashes to fuel 3 movies. A bigger factor, however, is the reunion of fat Jamie Foxx and the Cameron Diaz as romantic leads with nimble fight skills. The two actors first worked together in Oliver Stone's 1999 sports drama Any Given Sunday, and then again in 2014's regrettable movie musical remake, Annie. Diaz had since retired from acting to focus on her family until Foxx lured her back to work on this project, her first feature in 11 years. Their fizzy chemistry and ease with the characters' repartee are a welcome reminder of what effortlessly appealing screen performers they are. The movie is a return of a different kind for Foxx, who was hospitalized in Atlanta near the end of the shoot for an undisclosed medical emergency. He later revealed in HISA 2023 Netflix special, Jaime Foxx. What happened was a broken bar, that he had suffered a life-threatening stroke requiring months of physical therapy to relearn basic motor skills. Fans of both actors should be delighted to see them again. Not just bannering, but doing most of their own stunts. The star's pedigree also reinforces the A90s shots vibe of Fab back in action, which plays almost like a mashup of Fat Through Lies. I'd Mr. and Mrs. Smitha and Despite Kids with a dash of Mission Impossible, and Diaz, in action mode, inevitably recalls her rebellions in the first and best of Charlie's Angels, a big screen doover. Originality is not the strongest suit of the screenplay by director Gordon, who worked with Foxx, and Horrible Bosses and Brendan O'Brien Neighbors, Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. But the material's familiarity makes it agreeable comfort food movies like this, a starry, frothy, cute, harmless. Used to turn up regularly at the multiplex, they now occupy a shrinking part of the landscape in the post-Marvel era, as studios have intensified their focus on high-yield franchises. If this is the streaming universe's attempt to fill that gap with marquee talent, serving as a distraction from often preposterous plotting and an overqualified supporting cast to class it up, we could do worse. Gordon winks at the James Bond model in an action-packed opening sequence that introduces undercover CIA operatives Matt Foxx and Emily Diaz 15 years earlier, not long into their romantic relationship, just as Emily discovers she's pregnant. Agency handler Chuck. Kyle Chandler dispatches them to crack the safe of Eastern European terrorist beluga Robert Besta and get hold of a master key capable of crashing or controlling any system in the world. Matt and Emily are unarmed when the alarm is triggered, and in what becomes a running theme. The pair must improvise to fend off Gersugs with whatever objects are at hand, along with their impressive fist and footwork. Soon after Matt learns he's going to be a dad, they survive a deadly assault, an aerial disaster, and a precipitous nosedive on snow-covered Alps. He suggests it's time for them to quit the spy game and go off the grid. Their presumed death in the latest Narrow Escape, giving them the perfect cover, humane title card, jumping ahead to the present. Matt and Emily are living an everyday family life, raising 2 children, a sullen 14-year-old Alice McKenna Roberts, and her brother Leo Ryland Jackson, who's 11A in the squeaky clean suburbs of an unnamed American city. Frustrated by Alice's increasing hostility toward her, Emily starts to suspect she's lying about study evenings at a friend's house. This prompts both parents to resort to old spy tactics, resulting in an amusingly messy intervention during which their spontaneous Bodekari startles their mortified daughter. Matt attempts to shrug off her questions about their physical prowess. We took a couple Taekwondo lessons. When one of Alice's friends posts video of the incident online, Matt and Emily's cover is blown. Chuck turns up at their door, revealing that the master key was never recovered from the scene of the plane crash. And if he managed to track them down so easily, it won't be long before Goon Squad does the same, evading a storm of bullets and a fleet of hitmen in a high-speed chase through the BBS. They whisk the completely confused Ellis and Leo out of school and hop a flight to London, but they don't stay out of sight for long. Jer's mercenaries are soon on their tails, along with MI6 led by Baron Andrew Scott, a shifty type with a longtime crush on Emily. Despite not making it past the first date years earlier, one of the standout set pieces takes place at a gas station outside London, where Alice and Leo watch slack-jaw through a diner window as their folks take down a team of heavily armed assassins. Matt's creative use of a petrol pump is a nice touch, as is the weaponizing of a bottle of Diet Coke and the tube of Mendoz a little earlier. But there's only so much the kids can witness before Matt and Emily are forced to come clean about their international espionage credentials. For strategic plot reasons, the family heads to the gated country manor of Emily's English mother, Ginny Glenn Close, who finally gets to meet her grandchildren. Observing the frostiness between Ginny A., later described as an MI6 girl boss legend A., and Emily gives Alice insight into her mother's overprotectiveness. The introduction of Ginny and her younger lover, Nigel Jaime Detrieu, an overeager but inept wannabe spy whom she humors with false encouragement, pushes the comedy into daffier, more over-the-top territory. Close, who also does her own fight scenes, leans so hard into the posh hotel, she could be auditioning for a 103 Dalmatians The Mitri, who is serving quite large Brit sitcom tick, but they're endearing. And they serve a purpose, A, providing a splendid location for a siege when the family is traced, and then proving useful when the action shifts first to a formal event at the Tape Modern, and then to a climactic chase down the tumps involving both boats and a motorbike while all that is unfolding. Not one, but two key characters are revealed to be not what they seem. Back in action ascenders around two former CIA operatives who went rogue 15 years earlier, after ensuring some bad guys didn't get a cyber tourist weapon called the KA in a reasonably engaging opening scene involving a plane crash and the line "your inner thighs saved my life before leaving the service for good." I did wonder why a Cameron by his ass being John Malkovich. Emily was using a pregnancy test K broken bar at 52. That's the same age as me. Okay, maybe 15 years ago makes her technically 37. Still in the present day, they have two teenage kids. And since it's 2025, it's the girl who plays football. It's also at this juncture where they fill time with a lot of nonsense family stuff, such as daughter Alice McKenna Roberts, a skyscraper going to a nightclub despite being underage, and a subsequent altercation leads to Emily wanting to get back to her old job. However, the fight soon comes to them as when an old friend, Chuck Kyle Chan, AA Godzilla vs. Kong, tries to warn them. That's when the baddies surface and they want the key, as does MI6, Big Wig Baron, and Scott A. Ripley, all of us strangers. Cue a trip to jolly old England, where Emily's mother, Jenny Glenn Cloya, AA Kalology, lives in a mansion with toy boy Nigel. Jamie Dimitri as Jamie Demetriou as usual, since that's where hobby Matt Jamie Foxx hid the key all those years ago. Alas, a back in action has all been done better in films like He, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Then again, we never had a sequel to the Angelina actioner because they stated they didn't want to do the obvious of having the parents going around with kids into a broken bar, which is exactly what we have here. Basically, there's nothing in this that we've not seen before. And at almost 2 hours, it's way too long. Should be 100 minutes tops for this sort of film. I really can't imagine who saw the script for this and gave it the green light. On the plus side, it's just 102 minutes before the end credits begin. However, I can't even say it's so bad it's good. Because it's not. It's just existing. And everyone on screen is taking a busman's holiday on this one. If you want an action with Cameron Diaz, where the plot all makes no sense, but the action scenes are great, watch 2010's A Night and Day, where she co-stars with Tom Cruise. And if you want something decent with Jamie Foxx, go for 2017's A Baby Driver. Foxx and Diaz previously starred in 2014's remake of Fanny, after which Diaz retired from acting, so in a way she is back in action, although the stunts are either performed by stunt people or CGI. It's 26 centimeters. Such, when a baddie's car flips over, it'll all be CGI, whereas if it was a Michael Bay movie, he'd use real cars. And I would say this script feels like it was written by I. But I'm sure even Chad CPT could pull a better script out of its rear expansion port than what we have here. Oh, a Back in Action also teases a potential sequel. Please don't. How about something original? Last weekend I saw What a Real Pain in the Cinema with Kieran Culkin and Jesse Eisenberg. Absolutely bloody amazing and only 90 minutes. There's so much better cinema with more indie fare like that. And 2024's American Fiction and The Holdovers. Back in Action is another generic Netflix original made with unattentive audiences in mind. Thus, it tells a simple story that doesn't feel too different from other spy movies or action comedies. Rather, Ida relies on its stars' chemistria in order to garner some laughs from its viewers and generate some tension, which is fine. The thing is, apart from allowing Cameron Diaz, who announced her retirement shortly after appearing in Thea and Remake, to come back to blockbuster filmmaking, the film doesn't do anything particularly exciting or original. This results in a movie that can be watched while using TikTok or doing the laundry. Not exactly riveting stuff. Back in Action starts with the prologue that takes us back to a few years before the main events of the movie, in which we see a super speedy Samat Jamie Foxx and Emily Cameron Diaz surviving a plane crash in the mountains after failing to retrieve a MacGuffin called the key for the CIA. Since most people now think they're dead, and Emily has revealed to Matt that she's pregnant, they decide to retire and start a family, turning into normal people and leaving their world of violence and explosions and terrorists behind. Years later, Matt and Emily are living a happy life in the suburbs, although they do have a couple of problems with their kids. Teenager Alice McKenna Roberts is rebelling, and young Leo Ryland Jackson spends most of his time playing on his Nintendo Switch. Things get even more difficult, though, when the couple get discovered by the old enemies who think they still have the key. Knowing they can't put their kids in danger, the two spies decide to travel to England to meet Emily's mother, Jenny Glenn Close, who might be able to help them. But apart from being chased by terrorists, they're also being followed by MI6-led Andrew Scott. Back in Action has clearly been designed to be as familiar and comforting as possible, meaning the movie is full of cliché dildo copyright as we've seen countless times before. We've got the teen daughter who hates his mom, the kid addicted to video games, a couple of spies who have to get back into the game, a dangerous MacGuffin that's being sought by terrorists, and more. This would be fine if Seth Gordon and Brendan O'Brien's script did anything interesting with these elements, but that's not the case. A Back in Action is an incredibly predictable movie, and even when it tries to be surprising, it fails. Which is a pity because ether area things. To like here, there's some chemistry between the leads, for example, which results in a couple of legitimately hilarious moments. The fact that Baron apparently still has feelings for Emily adds an unexpected wrinkle to the plot, although the movie doesn't do much with it, and even though the action scenes of Five-Stuff's car chases, the works are generic and don't generate much excitement. At least they're well choreographed and shot clearly. That's where we're at, folks, thinking that a big-budget movie features decent, easy-to-follow fights. Moreover, it's fun to see charismatic O'Camera and Dawn in a new movie, even if it's tedious stuff such as this. She genuinely seems to be having fun. The same also Jamie Foxx, who plays a broken bar. Well, Jamie Foxx. In addition, A Back in Action features a rather interesting supporting cast, some of them having as much fun as the leads. Others a broken bar, not so much. Glenn Close plays Jenny as a British caricature, but a fun one at that. Kyle Chandler is suitably believable in a role that goes through a couple of significant changes, and both kids are charming enough. On the other end of the spectrum, Andrew Scott seems to be bored to tears playing Baron, the straight man in this entire affair. He looks like he wants to be somewhere else, probably back on the set of All of Us Strangers. Back in Action isn't horrible, it looks good. It features its leading actors actually getting involved in many of its action scenes, and it's quite funny at times, usually thanks to Jamie Foxx. But at the same time, it could be confused with any other action comedy or action thriller that Netflix has produced in the last 10 years or so. A Back in Action is too simplistic, too generic, and too predictable to be memorable. And the fact that it ends with sequel bait feels unearned and naively optimistic. I had enough fun with the film, I suppose, but I'm sure I will have forgotten most of it by the end of the week, 15 years ago. The duo had just completed their latest mission, stealing a powerful technological MacGuffin from under the nose of a ruthless international terrorist, Secret agent stuff. Matt's ready to celebrate a job well done. That's when Emily breaks the news. She's pregnant and mates the father. After getting over the initial shock, Matt's got a whole new reason to celebrate. He's always wanted a family, so has Emily. However, a career in international espionage does not mix well with parenthood. Just ask Emily. Her MI6 agent mother was hardly part of her life. But Emily wants to be present for their child, as does Matt. So, after surviving one last round of deadly peril, including turncoat agents in a plane crash, they decide to leave their cloak and dagger professions behind. Fast forward 15 years and Matt and Emily have settled into a quiet, suburban existence with their 2 kids. Matt coaches youth soccer. Emily sells puzzles on Etsy. The biggest challenge they face now is getting their son Leo to stop playing video games after bedtime, or navigating their daughter Alice's prickly teen years. And though they sometimes miss the thrill of their former lives, they wouldn't trade parenthood for anything in the world. But the spy life doesn't let anyone go at that easily. And when Matt and Emily accidentally expose their secret identities, old enemies come looking for revenge. The retired spies must return to action to protect their children, while hopefully keeping Ellis and Leo in the dark about their former vocation. Positive elements. Matt and Emily are dedicated parents. They give up glamorous careers to raise a family. They love and support their kids and each other. When their secret identities are revealed and the bad guys attack, Emily and Matt protect their children at all costs. Emily works hard to connect with her teenage daughter, Alice. In part, that's because Emily's mother, Jenny, was barely involved in her life growing up, and Emily's determined not to repeat those maternal mistakes. Initially, Alice seems to want nothing to do with her mom, but as their adventure progresses, their relationship starts to mend, as does Emily's relationship with a hero mother. We learned that even though Emily had cut off contact with Jenny, Mate kept Grandma in the loop, sending pictures of her grandchildren. And when Emily expresses frustration about Jenny, Matt quips, "Your mom is a piece of work, but she's still your mom." Though Matt and Emily lie to their children about their past as spies, they do it in the hope that their kids will be able to lead normal lives when their lies are eventually exposed. Alice and Leo question whether they really know their folks. Where your parents, Matt and Emily, respond, "That's who we are." Spiritual elements during an exhibit. A wall projection resembles a cross-bearing orb. Sexual romantic content. There are a handful of suggestive moments peppered throughout the film. For example, one gag has Alice and Leo hearing what they think are the sounds of their parents being intimate. Actually, the married couple is sparring, but Emily invites her husband to take a shower with her. After Jenny and her much younger boyfriend, Nigel, kiss passionately, Nigel tells Leo that his grandma has a habit of keeping me up all night before adding unconvincingly with her snoring. We learned that Matt and Emily had been sleeping together before their final spy mission and prior to their marriage. Emily takes several tests to confirm her pregnancy. A British spy is obsessed with Emily. Alice wears a revealing top to a club and kisses her boyfriend. A man kisses a woman's hand. A couple remarks on the strength of the woman's inner thighs. We hear a few songs with suggestive lyrics. Violent content, as you might expect from an action flick about spies returning to their deadly trade. A back and action that packs a lot of violence. Matt and Emily dole out a lot of damage to the swarms of nameless mercenaries that get in their way. People are clubbed, kicked, and stabbed while vehicles flip and crash. A couple of goons are set alike by a makeshift flamethrower. People are sucked out of a crashing plane to their deaths. Others get shot with bullets or tranquilizers. One man is winged by a bullet. Another appears to die in a boat explosion. Despite this spate of violence, it's accompanied by a surprisingly small amount of blood. There are 1 or 2 glimpses of the red stuff, but it's kept quick and minimal. Once the film's opening flashback wraps up, there's not much death either. In fact, the movie goes out of its way to tell us that Matt and Emily are purposefully a note of killing their enemies. Even though they wouldn't be shown the same courtesy, that's admirable. But still, the ways Matt and Emily incapacitate their foes look quite painful nonetheless. Elsewhere, a woman shoots a pheasant. Someone is tossed off a club balcony and crashes into a turntable below. Crude or profane language, unfortunately. A back and action. It takes advantage of the language leeway its PG-13 rating allows. We hear one F word along with 8 words. God's name is taken in vain nearly 20 times, including one misuse of Jesus' name. The N and the it are heard. H is used 5 times as is bossy, mostly in a club song. Other vulgarities we hear include on the whole, bard, piss, and crap. Someone uses a crude hand gesture. Drug alcohol content after a successful mission. Matt requests champagne. Jenny pours a mess cocktail and asks her granddaughter if she drinks gin. Reference is made to a white Russian drink and the drug ecstasy. The slang Molly is used. Emily has told her kids that if you smoke pot, you get diarrhea. A mother talks about drinking mocktails with her daughter. Underage teens party in a club with alcohol. Cigarettes are mentioned. Other note for the elements. When Emily shows Matt her many positive pregnancy tests, she warns him, I peed all over those. They know that by giving up their spy careers, they will have to cut off contact with everyone in their lives. When Emily realizes that list of people includes her mother, she says that's not a loss. Later, Emily lies to her kids telling them their grandmother is dead. As mentioned earlier, Emily and Alice are in a rough patch. Alice's computer password is Mom Sucks. Matt and Emily catch Alice at a club that she got into using a fake ID. When Alice complains that her friend's parents let them party, Emily says maybe their parents don't love them. Alice says her parents don't like her boyfriend because he's white out, which prompts Matt to remind her that her mother is white. Matt and Emily debate whether they should spy on their kids, especially as Alice has become more secretive. When they ponder sharing of their own secrets about their former lives, they tell themselves that good parents lie to their kids all the time. A car is stolen. Leo says that Diet Coke blocks cancer. A villain intends to sell a dangerous piece of technology to terrorists. Conclusion. In many ways, Netflix Back in Action feels like a throwback action comedy film. Jamie Foxx and Cameron and Diaz turn in charming performances as spice-turned suburban parents. The story is undergirded with the surprisingly sweet pro-family message. And while there is a lot of beat-him-up violence, there's very little bloodshed. Contrast that with last year's Of the Killer's Game, an R-rated action comedy which reveled in every gruesome kill alongside other content concerns, and a Back in Action seems almost quaint. But one flattering comparison does not a family-friendly movie make, and a Back in Action has plenty of issues that may give parents pause. Though the violence is mostly bloodless, it's still abundant. There's a lot of language, including an F word and several abuses of God's name, and some suggestive moments crop up throughout. The generic title of the new Netflix action comedy, Back in Action, could refer to both the movie's pedestrian story and to the entirely unrelated reason that people might be interested in watching it. Our protagonists are Emily and Matt, 2 romantically involved CIA super operatives who retire into anonymity due to Emily's pregnancy, only to be drawn back into spy movie shenanigans years later. But that's all reminiscent of bits and pieces of better movies, including a Kill Bill Volume 2A and a Mr. and Mrs. Smith. The real Lauren, who's playing this in from the cold couple, Cameron Diaz, coming out of a decade-long retirement from acting, and Jamie Foxx, who largely sat 2024 out following the stroke that delayed the production and release of Back in Action. In other words, 2 major movie stars have returned and reamed for some popcorn entertainment. Too bad this particular piece of popcorn entertainment may not ultimately muster even as much excitement as Diaz and Fox's 2 previous movies together, that those 2 previous Diaz-Fox projects for a sports drama Any Given Sunday and a musical, the 2014 remake of Fannie Mae indicate why Back of Action subtext about glamorous professionals returning to what they do best falls a little flat. Yes, both stars appeared in their share of lightweight entertainment, like the winkingly cartooner Sir Charlie's Angel set, or the caper like a horrible boss Sessa directed like Back in Action by Seth Gordon. But their eclectic careers haven't been dominated by the kind of star-studded, instantly forgotten sort of action sort of comedy that has flourished on streaming in recent years. Think a Red Notice, a Ghosted, a Roleplay? A Union and Argyll at these streaming spy movies all try for a mix of escapism. And laughs by Jack Cozing, cartoonishly high-tech espionage with Hum Life Back In. Action is more adept at depicting the latter, as the couple struggles with their tech-savvy younger son, Leon Ryland Jackson, and especially their rebellious older daughter, Alice McKenna Roberts. Emily is the overprotective parent while Mate does his best to stay laid back. a dynamic that the two stars play with an easy, affable chemistry. They're sweetly believable in a sitcom, soared away, and it's novel to see the once indomitable secret weapon of Diaz's, mega charm. Her distinctively sunny grenade failed to penetrate the armor of a pitiless teenager. At A, when the couple's old boss, Kyle Chandler, resurfaces looking for a long-lost MacGuffin, one of those all-purpose digital keys that can unlock anything on the grid, and so on. Pursued by a group of nefarious henchmen, the family must go on the run. This prompts Gordon and co-writer Brandon O'Brien to engineer a whole lot of clumsily directed chases and fights. The latter repeatedly scored with musty pop hits as some kind of jokeless running gag. Like other streaming spy movies, Back in Action aspires to Bondi Globe trotting and winds up with a meager range of green screen-friendly locations. Atlanta suburbs, a petrol station at night, and a generic mansion to name 3. The climax does hit up the Tate Modern in London, but only briefly do it early on in moments where violent self-defense seems to unlock something Emily and Matt suppressed during parenthood. Back in Action seems poised to unpack the idea that enjoying this kind of work involves a degree of sociopathy. But Gordon and co-writer Brendan O'Brien don't seem interested in, so their characters' ass-kicking is quickly recategorized as purely righteous. The mayhem is so frictionless that it appears to go entirely unnoticed. Endless machine gun rounds are fired through a suburban neighborhood in broad daylight. A car chase minutes later sends vehicles soaring through the air. Matt wields a gas pump as a flamethrower in full view of multiple civilians, and nobody ever bats. Tonight alerts the authorities. Back in Action isn't going for naturalism, but the interchangeable locations and vacuum-sealed action make the movie feel smaller without leaving room for it to be funnier. The best bits in its second half involve Nigel, Yaimi Dietrich, a bumbling MI6 trainee who's shacked up with Emily's arranged ex-spy mother, played by Glenn Close. Nigel's open-hearted enthusiasm has a depth, originality that the rest of the characters conspicuously lack as they learn predictable lessons about parenting. Child understanding. Far from a window into an exotic world of subterfuge and life or death stakes, or any analogies in the lives of Hollywood A-listers like Diaz and Foxx, the algorithmically generated plot points and robotic sequel seeding of Back in Action wind up feeling like another day at the corporate offices. You would think the first film for Cameron Diaz in over a decade would bring something to the table. But while Seth Gordon Back in Action pairs her nicely with Jamie Foxx, everything else is a pointless endeavor of listless action without fun or thrills. On paper, all the elements are there. Diaz is by no means going through the motions, getting back into the cinematic swing of things, while Foxx seems to genuinely be having a good time. But every element other than them is paint by numbers, predictable, and rote. It could have at least been bad enough to parody, but it never even reaches those levels. The film exists in cinematic purgatory. Not good enough to enjoy, not bad enough to make fun of. Diaz and Foxx star as Emily and Matt, a pair of CIA operatives secretly engaged, while on a mission. The plot doesn't really matter, but they have to get a fancy electronic control key from a stock Eastern European Russian bad guy. The plan goes awry. There's a plane crash. The key is lost, and the two escape, presumed dead. 15 years later, the couple have settled into domesticity with their children, Leo, Ryland Jackson, and Alice McKenna Roberts. While the kids have no idea of their identities, the couple struggle with raising their budding teenagers. When their former CIA friend, a wasted Kyle Chandler, shows up to warn them about the bad guy, they must go on the run with their kids to retrieve the control key. Hijinks are sure to ensue, right? Not really. There are action sequences, but they are pedestrian at best. Terrorists are trying to kill the couple, but they kind of act like Batman and refuse to actually kill anyone, though it is never stated. Everyone just gets knocked out. There is a severe lack of commitment to follow through on the bit. This couldn't decide if it wanted to be a family comedy or John Wick action film, so it towed the line of mediocrity. Thematically, we are battered over the head with Alice's rebellious nature as a 14-year-old, Emily and her constantly butt heads, and Alice often reminds the audience how lame she thinks her parents are. Leo is much more respectful and understanding of his parents, but is also much wiser than his years and talks like the most hip and cutting-edge 12-year-old, confounding his parents with his new slang and Gen Z sensitivity. All that is fine, but this isn't a fish-out-of-water story where these two operatives were saddled with these kids. They are their birth parents. They were always like this. There is no feeling whatsoever that these kids and these parents have ever seen each other before the events of this film began. It's so disingenuous. It stops Roberts from being in the least bit likable. It's not her fault, but the film is so vastly against her. There is no coming back. She never even gets a level of redemption. Just a Glenn Close cameo to help explain context. Having someone like Close, Chandler, and even Andrew Scott show up with little to do certainly doesn't help things. Close has a cool jacket, Chandler is barely around, and Scott only gets to growl. I hope they got a nice paycheck because the film isn't doing them any favors. Cameron Diaz and Jamie Foxx probably got a good workout filming the fight scene. Gina back in action at the latest high-gloss junk from Netflix. Clearly the actors earned their paychecks in a way that the person who thought up the title did not. Directed by Seth Gordon, Horrible Bosses, and written by Gordon and Brandon O'Brien. The movie is a spins wheel of wildly overused premise as an action comedy in which a married couple who met as spies but are now parents emerge from retirement, putting their children in danger. We first encounter Matt Foxx and Emily Diaz in a pre-suburban living prologue as they steal a fancy MacGuffin, a master key for some of the world's most critical infrastructure from an Eastern European terrorist on their getaway plane. No sooner has Emily told Matt that she's pregnant than the crew members reveal themselves to be working for the bad guys. A jauntily staged skirmish breaks out, a wild Dean Martin cruise, and that had a kick in the head on the soundtrack. The pilot's accidental death is treated as a sight gag, but somehow, Emily and Matt make their exit, a maneuver that requires fewer twists than any self-respecting mission. Impossible. Entry would have settled for, presumed dead in the plane crash. The couple now have the opportunity to ditch their careers as covert operatives. Flash forward a decade and a half, and they are raising a 14-year-old Alice McKenna Roberts who hates them, and a 12-year-old Leo Ryland Jackson who is marginally more compliant and a big tech nerd. When Matt and Emily violently retrieve the underage Alice from a nightclub, footage of them goes viral. Boomers wreck dance party and blows their cover. Soon their awakened enemies force them to jump to Britain, where a slimy agent, Andrew Scott, is ready to pounce, and Emily will be forced to make amends with her arranged mother, Jenny, also a retired operative. The revelation of the actress playing Chinny warranted a more eccentric surprise than Glenn Close. With characters who seem designed as placeholders for a future franchise rather than necessities in this one, the comedian Jaime Datriu turns up as Jin's sheepish trainee paramour. Back in action, has a better cast than its often mawkish writing earns. Mostly the familiarity takes its toll. A wrong direction car is a long way from To Live and Die in LA. Notwithstanding the choice to add a grenade made from a Diet Coke and Mentos. And somehow, after taking a plunge in the sort of temp, Alice and Leo are completely dry upon rescue. Evidently, the person who coined the title wasn't the only one who couldn't be bothered. Back in Action is directed by Seth Gordon, director of for Christmases 2008, Horrible Bosses 2011, Identity Thief 2013A, and a Baywatch 2017. I don't think anyone should be surprised that a Netflix January action comedy ends up being terrible. The whole selling point of this movie was that Cameron Diaz came out of retirement from acting, which, that's great. We all love Cameron Diaz, but coming out of retirement for this movie really leaves me with a lot more questions than answers. Cameron Diaz isn't terrible here and is trying her best with the script given, but her performance is not exactly great here either. She's capable of far better performances, and here it just seems like we get almost absolutely nothing. A lot of what people love about Diaz as an actress is absent, and feels more like we got Cameron Diaz, but everything that audiences love about her acting is not here. Jamie Foxx falls in the same boat. While the chemistry between Diaz and Foxx isn't bad and has a few sweet moments, it's not quite enough to really save the movie. Jamie Foxx and Cameron Diaz are stuck with such a terrible script that tells horrible jokes and throws as many sequences at the wall with none of them sticking. Glenn Close is just kind of here and is nothing more than a poorly written side character. The movie itself, as I said before, is so poorly written. This is about as dull as you can get when it comes to action comedies. Everything that you expect is going to happen unfolds almost immediately. There's no sense of direction, with the plot being strangely convoluted for such a straightforward premise. The movie is also a Spy Kids 2001A, but instead of kids, it's adults, which doesn't work, mainly because 90% of spy films are already like that. A Spy Kids at the very least had an audience in mind and is goofy fun, even if the movie doesn't hold up well. A Back in Action is just a mishmash of terrible ideas and cliches thrown into a blender. Nothing more and nothing less. There really isn't a whole lot else to say about Back in Action. It's a movie you're going to remember 30 minutes after watching and then move on. The only reason why this movie is known is because of Cameron Diaz coming out of retirement. Without that, this movie would not have gotten a single ounce of advertising. Lately, I've had to rely on Netflix to supply many of my movies for review because we haven't had any screenings of new releases, which isn't unusual for the first quarter of the year. Most of the great movies are released in the last quarter of the year, and we have a dearth of good films until the summer blockbusters come out when kids get out of school. For most new movies, Amazon Prime changes fees, which irritates me because I pay every month to have Amazon Prime. I refuse to pay extra for a movie to review. I had planned to cover the Critics' Choice Awards, which were originally being shown on E! On January 12th, but were postponed because of the California wildfires to this past weekend, but were postponed again until February. The Critics' Choice Association is composed of 580 American and Canadian film critics. Your Back in Action is a comedy action film about two spies who want to leave the spy business and lead normal lives. Their last mission was to steal a key that gives the bearer the ability to control utilities and things all over the world. On their way home, they are believed to be killed in a plane crash. 15 years later, when they are seen on social media, their lives and lives of their two kids are turned upside down and sideways. Academy Award winner Jamie Foxx's Matt, who was married to Emily, played by Cameron and Diaz. Dua McKenna Roberts is Alice, their daughter. Andrew Jackson plays their son, Leo, 8-time Academy Award nominee. Glenn Close is Emily's arranged mother, Jenny. Kyle Chandler is Chuck Matt, and Emily's CIA handler Back in Action was directed by Seth Gordon and was written by Gordon and Brandon O'Brien. They billed the movie as a comedy, but there wasn't a lot of comedy in the movie. Gordon needed to hire a comedy writer to add more funny lines to beef up the script. Back in Action has now debuted on Rotten Tomatoes, and the score marks a lackluster acting return for star Cameron Diaz, directed by Seth Gordon. The Netflix action comedy stars Diaz and Jamie Foxx as former CIA operatives, Emily and Matt respectively, as they are pulled back into the world of spycraft after their real identities are exposed. The film marks Diaz's return to acting after 10 years away from the spotlight, and Theo back, and action reviews are now making their way online, are suggesting it might not be a triumphant one as the film now becomes available to stream on Netflix. A Back in Action's a Rotten Theatas's score has begun to take shape. As of writing it, the film stands at a disappointing 25% from 20 reviews, earning it a rotten designation. This score is likely to fluctuate, however, as more reviews are added. There currently aren't enough audience reviews for a popcorn score to take shape, but one should appear this weekend as more Netflix subscribers get the chance to check out the movie. From the reviews released thus far, A Back in Action is looking like another in a long line of Netflix movies that fail to offer up anything new or interesting. In her review for A Screen Rant, Berdisa Abdi awards the movie 5 out of 10 stars, praising Foxx, Diaz, and Glenn Close, while writing that others into Back in Action. A cast which includes Andrew Scott are sleepwalking through the film. She goes on to take issue with the lack of originality and just how half-hearted the whole thing feels, though. Movies like Yakaria, not 2024, A Rebel Raya 2024, and The Extraction of films have been highlights of Netflix's action movie catalog. A Back in Action looks destined to end up in the same category as films like A Red Noia 2021, A Damsla 2024, A Atlasa 2024, At the Grey Manna 2023, and The Heart of Estonia 2024, among others. All of these titles may feature flashy effects, big stars, and large budgets, but they generally aren't regarded as being very good. That being said, most have been viewership hits, and the star power alone means A Back in Action is likely to also pull in viewers. Cameron Diaz and Jamie Foxx star as former spies, turned parents in Netflix action comedia Back in Action. Although the couple left their dangerous occupations in favor of an everyday suburban lifestyle after having their first child, their past catches up with them when their location is blown. With their whole family now at Target, they have no choice but to take their kids along for the ride as they attempt to reclaim their old lives. What follows is a by-the-numbers outing that is just enough to pass as entertaining. Foxx and Diaz are the main reason to watch. Even with a large chunk of their lines being boss the copyright gags about parenthood, they nevertheless share a warm chemistry from the outset with the high energy levels and charm the leads radiate on screen, assuring that viewers keep rooting for them to succeed. The collection of action sequences is likewise well executed. Apart from some questionable CGI during a plane crash, which concludes the first act, the car, chases and fight scenes that make up this, feature centerpieces are slickly produced with stylish cinematography and snappy pacing. Everything else about this film, however, is as generic as it gets. From talk about an important football game in the opening that inevitably serves as the feel-good epilogue, a forgettable big bad whose only motivation is money, and a mother butting heads with their angsty teenage daughter. Audiences will have seen these tropes 100 times before with no surprises to be found along the way. A back and action gives audiences exactly what they'd expect to see from a movie with this genre and premise. Alongside the two leads, Glenn closes another huge name attached to this project. She plays the exceedingly wealthy mother to Diaz's character, who appears around the halfway mark. Despite the veteran star giving her all, the script never knows what to do with her. She's mostly sidelined to a running joke about having a much younger lover, Jaime Ditrieu, which is as odd as it sounds. On January 17th, the streaming service Netflix released the comedic by-action film A Back in Action, in which Cameron Diaz returned to acting after a 10-year hiatus. Her co-star on a set was Jamie Foxx, for whom this is already the 5th project on Netflix in the last 5 years. In the review below, we discuss what exactly this story aiming at an author, Mr. and Mrs. Smitha, offers the audience and whether it's worth spending your time on the new release at all. It's been 15 years since former CIA agents. Now a regular couple, Matt and Emily left their dangerous work, had kids, and settled in a quiet suburb of Atlanta. But one day, their cover is blown, and befuddled youths with hostile intentions pay the couple a visit. So now the retired operatives must recall their combat skills to fend off the uninvited guests and prevent a critical technical device from falling into the wrong hands. Do A Back in Action is notably marked by the return of the striking blonde Cameron Diaz, whom viewers could see on screens over a decade ago. Even then in 2014, the musical comedic drama AA, as well as the comedies, A Sex Tap, and The Other Woman were critically panned. Although 2 of these 3 projects turned out to be financially successful before, that was Ridley Scott The Council, or a Ridley Scott with a truly wild scene where the actress bedded the front windshield of a yellow Ferrari right before the embarrassed eyes of Javier Bardem's character. But whatever the case, after the aforementioned films, Diaz decided to take an indefinite leave, during which she managed to marry Benji Madden of the pop-punk band, Good Charlotte, and have 2 children. Unfortunately, her return to the big screen can hardly be called triumphant. Within the first 10 minutes, during a breathtaking airplane scene, it becomes clear what kind of movie awaits us. Say it's best not to demand realism here. What heck with it? What heck? A lighthearted comedic action flick on a Friday on Netflix is not the grim spy passions in the style of Jason Bourne. However, the film continues to offer nothing but cliché tilde copyrights, rusty genre tropes, and a complete void of any creative invention. The problem is that in recent times, the industry has turned out these kinds of monotonous adventures of plenty. The details may vary, but the essence is the same as the main characters. A man and a woman stand up against villains, and ideally, the situation should have a certain context. Or, for example, intelligence agencies recruit a perplexed newbie or someone involved is unaware of the real trait of the person next to them. So let's count in a ghost. A Chris Seven certainly didn't expect that his romantic interest would turn out to be a cool CIA agent. In a role, a David Olo was shocked to learn that his wife, played by Kay Kuo, was a hired assassinina at the Union R. Wahlberg, was rapidly trained as a secret agent joining forces with Halle Berry, and the family planner at the same Wahlberg played a family man hitman, being hunted. Even Diaz herself was once in the aforementioned Evans' shoes and got into trouble because of a spy played by Tom Cruise in A Night in Dia 2010. Actually, the family Plano has the most in common with a Back in Action. In both cases, the happy families have to leave their idyllic suburb and flee from bad guys. Moreover, the main points from the review of the movie with Wahlberg can easily be copy-pasted here. So, if you are still not tired of such a soulless, repetitive conveyor, you can only applaud your resilience and patience. Lining up the dreary atmosphere are two very well-shot chases with impressive camera swoops and a delightfully inept character played by Jaime Ditrieu. He somehow tries to bring comedy, and in one scene, he literally mimics the actions of a limousine driver from a Die Hard 1988. Overall, a Back in Action that conveys a message that in our times, it's much harder to handle rebellious teenagers than sinister terrorists. And it makes it clear that if one is to return to acting, it definitely should not be for such films. Retirement is a loose word in Hollywood. Some honor its meaning, while others use it in an exceptionally general liberal connotation. Credit to Cameron Diaz for taking an extended break from the big screen after 2014 to spend time getting married, becoming a mother, and focusing on herself. Now, a whole decade later, Diaz has returned in the appropriately titled The Back in Action.A. And if I'm spending an exceptional amount of time discussing Diaz's involvement here, there's a good reason why. It's because the returning star's screen presence, particularly after such an extended public absence, is ultimately the only notable aspect of this bland, textureless mashup of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, a Spy Kids, a True Lies, and perhaps a dash of fathy Incredibles, to name a few. A Back in Action is yet another Netflix trifle that feels like algorithm fodder. More than anything, fully realize that it should happen to feature the return of such a prominent '90s actor, while also recalling so many movies around that period. Only sullies whatever fun is intended. You cannot help but think back to better times. It's not often that movies make you nostalgic for 2014. Za, Annie Matt, Jamie Foxx, and Emily Diaz are two of the CIA's top agents. The duo have amassed a career filled with death-daying acts. When Emily learns that she's pregnant, she and Matt slip away from their ever-hazardous lives to raise a family together under new identities. As the guardians of predictably indignant teens, Matt and Emily have learned that all the CIA training can prepare you for the woes of a try-hard parent. When their instincts result in a well-documented altercation at a nightclub, Matt and Emily need to return to a lifestyle they've long since left behind. They're now being sought for their ownership of a secret trinket that holds an enormous amount of evil power. But that's the least of Matt and Emily's problems, particularly when it relates to keeping their children in the dark about their pasts and safe from great danger. For whatever it's worth, it's super nice to see Diaz again. If you didn't know it, you wouldn't think this is her first time in a big film in years, let alone a decade. She brings the same spunk, energy, and heart scene in her best performances, Willie Back in Action, and this role doesn't trank in the same company. It's at least a firm improvement from the aforementioned Adani. Much like that film, Diaz reunites with Foxx and shares a warm, personable chemistry that is slightly endearing. Granted, it's not enough to redeem an achingly monotonous, uninspired bit of streaming content, but it does give you some hope. False hope, but still that they can work it out. Whether this is a proper return, or just simply a brief reprise of her former life, much like her on-screen personality, it's clear that she can still bring an affable charm and warm likability. Even in these sterile Netflix proceedings after the outstanding 2007 documentary of The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, director Seth Gordon has been making a living in lackluster studio comedies, Horrible Bosses, A Baywatch. The good news is that A Back in Action can be seen as a very modest step up from his other desperately annoyingly low-thome films. Gordon seems ill-suited for this film, unremarkable though it might be. While he holds a co-writing credit, his directing neither suits the comedy nor action. Much like his past features, Gordon favors tight medium shots that don't serve either genre. The action ends up choppy and uninvolving, while there are occasionally enjoyable set pieces, like a neon-coded sequence that feels like something rejected from a John Wicker sequel. His framing is so snipped and listless as to fail to capture whatever momentum is intended in any given scene. Furthermore, the comedy often proves even more dire. While seasoned pros Foxx and Diaz try to make it work, so many scenes rely on half-baked out-of-touch parent gags or predictable setups and lukewarm payoffs that they never attract many sparks either. While never quite as excruciating as Gordon's lesser works, the lack of any real sauce here doesn't make it a whole lot better. It just doesn't inspire as much vitriol. But when you have such talented stars at the forefront, including one making her return to the form, you can't help but want some more. I hope this isn't the last we see of Cameron Diaz as far as her on-screen acting career goes. She remains a winning star. And while it's understandable that she wanted to take some time for herself and her family, it's apparent that she can still radiate when the moment calls for it. The absence appears to elevate her star persona. In fact, it gives her more enthusiasm to shine. So it's a shame that the material just isn't there. Do a Back in Action is as listless and generic as these types of doll streaming exclusives go? While it's nice, even occasionally winsome, to see Diaz back in action here, she deserves a vehicle that richly services her once missing talents. Back in Action, directed by Seth Gordon, is trending on Netflix at the time of publication. This film features Cameron Diaz as Emily and Jamie Foxx as Matt, a CIA agent. It is full of action and humorous scenes that keep the audience engaged. Emily and Matt are former CIA agents who decide to leave the agency because it could put their family at risk. However, they are pulled back into this dangerous career because their enemies believe they have a secret key. After their last mission, it was thought that they were dead, but their identities were exposed after a fight in a club. The sequence of events in Back in Action are entertaining and intriguing, considering the movie's beginning includes an intense mission. This specific type of scene can catch the audience's attention. The CGI in the scene was impressive and full of adrenaline. The fighting scenes portrayed by Diaz as Emily were impressive and skillful. She shows her character's strength and bravery as an agent while pregnant. The connection between Matt and Emily is a highlight due to their care for one another. Their goal is to protect their family no matter the cost. The transition from being CIA agents to normal parents without this dangerous job is hilarious. The scenes of Emily bickering with her daughter Alice McKenna Roberts show their intense mother-daughter relationship. Emily's goal as a mother is to protect her children and lighten her relationship with her daughter. The film's plot is a high, considering how thrilling it can be to run away from terrorists and/or mercenaries. This takes the audience on an exciting adventure as we hope to keep Alice and Leo Ryan Jackson, Emily's other child, safe. The plot twists in the film are unexpected and show that Matt and Emily cannot trust anyone from their past. The grandmother, Ginny Glenn Close, was hilarious. She is this British former agent. She is sarcastic and has an intense relationship with her daughter, Emily. The amount of bravery and assertiveness she shows can be seen in her daughter. The relationship is rocky, but it teases as the movie continues. This shows how one event can change the perspectives of Emily's beliefs regarding her mother. Back in Action has minimal lows, but it has a more predictable ending. This can take away from the audience's attention and can disengage. The lack of knowledge regarding the secret key is low because it needs to show what it can do. Some scenes describe it but provide more to understand why it is so dangerous. Alice's attitude at the beginning is low because she is a hard-headed teen who doesn't get along with her mother. She makes things more complicated for her mother rather than just trusting her. This can get annoying throughout the film because it is repetitive. Co-written, directed by Seth Gordon, Horrible Bosses, A Identity Thief, Thea's story centers on former CIA spies Matt, Emily, Foxx, Diaz, respectively, who decide to leave that world behind after Emily discovers she is pregnant with Matt's child during an operation that almost took them out in plane crash. That mission, the couple hide in plain sight in the suburbs to raise their family and start fresh. After 15 years in hiding, they are living the standard nuclear family life, coaching soccer for their 14-year-old daughter, Alice, skyscrapers, McKenna Roberts, selling puzzles on Etsy, tracking screen time for their young son, Leo Rylan Jackson. However, after a video surfaces online, blowing their cover, Matt and Emily are forced to jump back into their former espionage lives in order to protect everything they've built and keep their family safe. Alongside Foxx Diaz, the cast features such notable names as Oscar nominee Glenn Close as Emily's arranged mother Jenny, A Friday Night Lights, a star Kyle Chandler as Chuck, Three-time Emmy nominee Andrew Scott as Baron, off the winner, Jamie Diotriou as Nigel with the back and action of being the long-awaited return for Cameron Diaz and the production in which Foxx had to endure a brain bleed that led to a stroke. More eyes will be drawn to this pretty standard action spy comedy than usual. But is it worthy of such attention? Will the audience for these massive stars be let down after such a buildup? Well, the answer is not really on both counts. With the fairly pedestrian storyline and minimal character depth, the film won't wow you for its inventive, propulsive script. However, its more impressive features lie more in the action than the comedy, which seems a little backward in a Foxx Diaz vehicle. Car chases with vehicles flipping in the air, motorcycles used as a weapon flying towards the enemy, gas station pumps turned flamethrowers, solid, hand-to-hand combat, and a daring climax between high-speed boats are just some of the examples of what a back and action that is surprisingly capable of in the genre. However, the audience for this film probably signed up hoping to get some of the goofy, snappy wit that the leads have been known for in their best work over their long careers. While the action will be in abundance, the chemistry between Foxx Diaz leading to jokes that make the film more bouncy and fun will only come in dribs and drabs. As spy partners and the spouses, the leads feel more transactional than genuine, and don't always seem like the best fit as a duo. Despite Diaz's claims in the press that she took the project after a decade away, only because it was Foxx attached in the first place, in fact, Foxx Diaz and the movie as a whole get bailed out by another duo. The far more unlikely pair of Glenn Close, Jaime de Trieu as Diaz, is a strange mother and legendary spy in her own right. Close brings a level of brass, conviction, generational cohesion to the story, giving advice, perspective to her granddaughter, while also doing out some punishment to the villains who put her in danger, Close's. Jenny surprisingly has a young gentleman caller CIA trainee in the form of Jaime Demetrius Nigel, who does all he can to make his stamp on the proceedings. From intensely making out with Close to overselling his abilities as a spy in training, Demetrio steals many scenes as the only pure comedic performance in a movie that desperately needs it, despite the normally more outlandish leads. As a pair, Close Demetrio give the story a jolt at a crucial time and help guide us to a more entertaining and satisfying conclusion. And some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. Or